Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session, Education USA's Sports Showcase Series on how US universities cultivate sports excellence. That's what this session is going to be about. But before we begin the session, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping points and then also quickly introduce Education USA, and then we'll move on to the session. So to start with just a few housekeeping points, we have muted everyone so that there is minimal distraction. But there will be time for Q&A, so you'll be able to enter your questions into the chat box at the end. I would suggest wait to hear the entire presentation so that your questions might be answered during the session as well. And also you can then keep your questions more relevant, and then towards the end, you can start entering your questions into the chat box. Please keep your questions relevant to the session. Please note that we are not actually going to be discussing how to study in the US or how to apply to US universities. We are looking at the US student athlete model as a model that cultivate sports excellence while you study, and that is applicable in the US and beyond. So please keep your questions relevant to that. If you have questions about the application process, we'll be putting our contact information in the chat box, and you are welcome to reach out to us, and we'll guide you to resources, to help take your questions further. Please use headphones if you'd like, more enhanced quality, and keep an eye out in the chat box. There'll be some useful links and so on posted there. To introduce Education USA to you, we are US government network supported by specifically the US Department of State. We are the official source on US higher education and countries beyond the US. We provide accurate, comprehensive, and current information to students on US education, US higher education. And this is a global network. There are over 430 centers in over 175 countries. I am Deborah Rosario. I'm an Education USA advisor based in Mumbai and hosting this session on behalf of Education USA India. You can stay connected with us on our social media channels, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Usually our handle is at Education USA India. There's also a QR code here that you can scan and enter your details in to get updates on sessions like these in the future. And now we will move on to the session, to the meat of the session. So as you know, this session is on how US universities cultivate sports excellence. The US university model of incorporating sports or athletics into an academic environment has generally been considered a global model for nurturing competitive and non-competitive sports excellence. Students represent universities in highly competitive teams. They may also find other avenues for their athletic interests on campus. And playing sports at universities can set students up for success in the sporting arena, but also more generally in professional journeys and in life. So to explore this idea of how US universities cultivate sports excellence, we're going to explore the US model of how sports is integrated into the university environment. To do this, we'll have a three-part session. A first section on varsity athletics, the second section on other models for athletics on campus, and then in the third section, we're very honored to have Himani Moore, and I'll introduce her in more detail, who has both played competitively in India and in the US and has coached in the US as well. She's played tennis, and I will give you more details. And I will, we will do a Q&A with her and learn more of her experience as an athlete and a coach. So yes, I briefly introduced Himani Moore. We were due to have Alejandro Andres with us, but unfortunately he was unable to make it. However, we're very happy to have Andrew Kupek with us, Director of International Admissions at Bryant University, and also, I believe, a student athlete in himself, and Andrew will tell us more about his background as well. And Andrew will walk us through the first two sections of this session, and then I will move on to Q&A with Himani. And as I said before, there will be Q&A for both our speakers at the end of the session as well. So do keep your questions for both our speakers at the end. All right, Andrew, over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this today. I've spent a lot of time in India over the last 6 years or so it's always nice to connect with families and prospective students from India. And I hope my perspective is helpful. So, as was said, I'm the director of international admission at Bryant University. I've worked in admission for 12 years. I've been at Bryant for over 6 years now. And I was also a Division II athlete myself a long time ago. And I won't talk too much about that because I think you definitely want to hear from Hamani and her perspective of the recruitment process and also from the coaching perspective and things like that. But I can give you a little bit of the overview from someone that works within admission and the way that we look at athletics and the way that we work with athletics. And I hope that's helpful. And again, I'm not a coach. I'm not from the athletic department. Um, but I hope that this overview is helpful to you as you go through the process. So when you look at collegiate athletics in the United States, you'll hear the NCAA, and that's probably the most popular. If you're in the if you're in the U.S. and you turn on the TV on a Saturday, you're going to and you see 80,000 people in a football stadium at the University of Alabama. That's going to be
And
an
Amrita also, she's
NCAA
not responding.
sanctioned athletic.
And
I'm
tell
sorry.
Labia also.
I'm just going to ask you to yeah, perfect. Thank you. So there's the NCAA, the NAIA, and the NJCAA, which are the three athletic sanctioning bodies within the U.S. Bryant University is an NCAA Division I institution. I played at a Division II NCAA institution, so the majority of what I'm speaking from would be from an NCAA perspective, but understand that those other sanctioning organizations provide athletics in the U.S. and oftentimes the NJCAA is an opportunity for students from a junior college perspective that might then transfer on to another NCAA institution, which provides an opportunity for students to do so. So if you look at the NCAA in particular, there's over 1,000 colleges and universities in the NCAA, and they're across 102 different athletic conferences. So athletic conferences would refer to a group of universities that come together to compete within their conference, within their division, and within their sanctioning body. So if you look at specifically Division I institutions in the U.S., there's about 350 or so. And if you look at the makeup of the student body, if you're at a Division I institution, um, about one in every 23 students on that campus would be an NCAA Division I athlete, and the median undergraduate enrollment at a Division I institution is about 8,900 students. So NCAA Division I institutions are often associated with being larger institutions and are often associated with being the highest level of athletic competition within the U.S. But you'll see that even at the Division II and Division III level, still extremely competitive athletics and it's still an extremely competitive recruitment process. Um, there's exceptions to that. Bryant's a school of 3,600 undergraduate students. We are still a Division I institution, right? So there still is variance in terms of the size of schools within Division I. Oftentimes, Division I is associated with receiving full scholarships, which can be true, but about 57% of Division I athletes will receive athletic aid to attend the institution. You're moving down to Division II institutions. Um, these Division II institutions still provide athletic scholarship or athletic aid. The median undergraduate enrollment of these institutions is about 2,500 students. So typically slightly smaller, but again, variance in terms of size there. and about 1 in every 10 students on a Division II campus is a student athlete. And actually, 63% of these students are receiving some type of athletic aid. Um, Again, for certain sports, full scholarship might be possible, but I oftentimes, in my mind, will associate Division II sometimes with more partial awards. But again, that varies from institution to institution. And then the last would be Division III. Um, this would even be a slightly smaller median undergraduate population. About 1,700 is the average. Again, variance in terms of size, and about 1 in every 6 students on a Division III campus is typically a student athlete. Division III athletics does not provide athletic scholarship or athletic aid, but students can still receive funding from the institution, right? So 80% of students receive non-athletic aid that attend Division III institution as Division III athletes. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the landscape of Division I, Division II versus Division III. If anybody happened to be following the NCAA men's tournament that was on TV this weekend, that would be a Division I national basketball athletic tournament. Please let me know if you have any questions about that. So the NCAA, if you look specifically at that, you can go to the NCAA and you can create a profile with the NCAA, and you'll need to do that to be recruited to a Division I or Division II institution. And the NCAA essentially sets eligibility criteria to make sure that you're eligible to be recruited and enter the NCAA. So there's certain course requirements that students hit. There's certain GPA requirements that students need to hit in order to be eligible to be recruited and to come to the U.S. and participate in Division I, Division II, or Division III sport. I will say, typically those criteria are met by the curriculums that I would see in India, whether that's CBSE or ICSE or a state board curriculum or IB or A level or an American curriculum school. But again, each athletic department will have people that will work with you through this possible to make sure that you can meet that eligibility requirement. The SAT is no longer required. It was required for a long time for NCAA recruitment. And then at the Division III level, you can still create a profile page, but it's not required. With the eligibility center with the NCAA for Division I or II, you should really build that profile. We can certainly talk more about eligibility requirements. You also need to meet certain standards for amateurism. So athletic departments can certainly help you with that. And I would also tell you, once you're a student athlete on a campus, you do need to maintain eligibility to continue to compete in athletics, right? So once you're an undergraduate student at the institution, you have to make sure you're staying up with your credit requirements, and you have to also make sure you're meeting minimum GPAs depending on the Division I level to make sure that you're eligible to continue to compete. Again, I think these are very manageable GPA requirements based on the high school profile of students, the academic expectations of the institutions they're attending. But I can tell you, I had classmates that I attended that had to sit out the spring athletic semester because their GPA fell behind a certain level, or they had to miss a whole year of competition because they fell behind the credit. Most U.S. institutions will have academic advisors that will work with student athletes that will make sure that you're maintaining and staying on pace, not only to graduate in 4 years or graduate in the expected amount of time, but also make sure that you're maintaining your eligibility to continue to compete. I do have some links that I can share as well in the chat after that. Are some really good resources in terms of like guide to international student academic standards, to Division I resource sheet, and some other recruitment eligibility information. I do certainly want to let Hamani talk about the recruitment process as well. But at the Division I level, the recruitment process is extremely competitive. There's limited roster sizes. The landscape of athletics has changed, as you'll see a lot of transfer students. Like I can think of our men's soccer team. We have transfer students from Portugal or Spain coming in for graduate degrees that still have years of eligibility. So if you look at, you're not only competing against other 17 and 18-year-olds, you're also competing against other older students that might be switching institutions or might have remaining eligibility that are coming in for graduate degrees, making those limited roster spots even more competitive. The most important thing, make sure to put together an athletic resume, put together a video profile. You can fill out athletic questionnaires on athletic websites. You can email coaches directly with that athletic resume, with that videotape. Oftentimes, individual sports can be a little bit not easier, but a little bit more clear than some team sports because if you're a tennis player and you can share a UTR, if you're a swimmer and you can share a time, or if you're a track athlete, you can share specific times and specific tournaments that you've played in. It's a little bit easier to make yourself stand out in the recruitment process. For sports like volleyball or basketball or soccer, it can be a little bit more challenging because it's harder to evaluate you within a team context. And that's why that videotape is often very important. But oftentimes, coaches are going to be more likely to provide scholarships or spots to students that they've seen play in person. So not all students can do this, but if you do have the opportunity to play at a high level camp within the U.S. or an international tournament where coaches are recruiting students, that could be a really good way to stand out in the process. I would also tell you the process is going to be different at every school, but the way that it's always worked for me is if a coach is interested in recruiting a student, and understand that the recruitment process often accelerates the admission process. We have students that are committing to Bryant in grade 11, right? Almost 2 years before they're graduating from high school. So a coach might start recruiting a student, and they'll communicate to us in the admission office. And they will say, can you take a look at this transcript, some basic information? And the admission office will give what we call a likely letter. And we'll say this student's likely to be admitted. They're likely to be admitted at this scholarship level. And we'll communicate that to coach, and then coach can use that information to put together an athletic offer or recruitment offer for a particular student. All right, because we want the student to know that they're going to be admitted, and we also want to have a clear financial picture for the student before they're making a commitment to the institution. Different schools might handle that differently, but that's the way I've done it at both a Division II and a Division I institution. Remember that verbal offers are just verbal offers. You got to make sure that you're fully admitted to the institution. You're receiving information that you have a full athletic offer. You're signing documentation that says, I'm committed to that institution at this particular level. The recruitment process can be challenging for students, especially I think international students, that the exposure to U.S. coaches can be a little bit more challenging. But the good news is, last time I checked, there was over 20,000 international student athletes competing in athletics in the United States. And I know at Bryant we bring in probably 10 to 20 international student athletes every year. So coaches are certainly recruiting across the globe, but extremely competitive roster spots again. I hope that is a good introduction to U.S. athletics. I believe we had a question in the chat that we'll make sure that we get responded to later. But I think we can flip to the next slide. I'm going to give a brief overview of club sports and other athletics at campus, and then I'm going to turn it over to the star speaker of the show, and then hopefully we have some time for questions. I would also tell you most colleges and universities in the U.S. are also going to offer opportunities beyond NCAA or NIAA athletic varsity teams. You'll often find those offered in the form of club sports or intramural sports, right? So these all provide opportunities for students to stay active, to continue to compete in sports that they participated in high school, to build community, to make friendships. And, to be honest, some of the club sports are extremely competitive levels, right? Club sports are an opportunity to be a part of a team. They still often require tryouts. Not all club sports, but many club sports will offer tryouts. You're still going and competing against other colleges and universities. At Bryant, the way we offer club sports is you have a coach, you have access to our athletic training facilities and our exercise and weight room facilities. You might play in national tournaments if you qualify for those, and you're traveling to compete against other colleges and universities. So for students that maybe quite can't play at a Division I or Division II or Division III institution, club sports is a really nice way to continue some of those athletic abilities. Um, so and again, this is it's Division I athletics, Division II athletics, Division III athletics, very very big time commitment. You have practice, you have travel responsibilities, you have um, weekend events, you have film, you have team meetings, you have weightlifting sessions. The intramural sports, club sports, and recreation certainly provide a different balance. And we can flip to the next slide to talk a little bit more about club sports. But again, like I said, you have a coach, you have travel, they have budgets, you have access to national tournaments. Um, Oftentimes, it's a little bit more student run, right? So the president of the club or the captain of the team might be more responsibility for planning things or practices. But I will say certain club sports, we have coaches at Bryant that will actually recruit for our club sports team. Right, you won't find men's and women's rugby at the NCAA Division I level, but it is a very high level club sport. And our club rugby team and coach are actively recruiting and bringing in students. They're not necessarily eligible for athletic scholarship, but we're trying to bring in and make our club sport teams very competitive. Right, so you can see some of the examples, and I used a lot of Brian examples of some club sports. But rugby is extremely popular. I know ultimate frisbee has gone on to participate in national championships. We implement things like esports, but you'll also see club sports that will might come and go based on demand. Like squash is a sport that has been at times at Bryant's when it's super popular and a lot of students are involved in it. It's other times when it's gone away and it seems to come back and forth. Our dance team competes nationally. Our cheer team competes nationally in tournaments. They've done really well. So please keep in mind some of those club sports. It's a really nice way to be a part of a team if the Division I athletic or Division II athletic doesn't work out for you in terms of the recruitment process. You can switch to intramural sports. I'll go through this quickly. I think probably familiar. These are just organized leagues on campus. You're still playing a part of a team. I played intramural basketball when I was in college as a Division II athlete, and there's some pretty high level basketball games going on campus. So still an opportunity to compete, have fun. It builds community, it builds friendships. Typically shorter seasons, 4 to 8. And popular sports, basketball, soccer, flag football, volleyball, dodgeball, kickball are things that you're going to find on most college campuses in the U.S. And I would also tell you, and you could flip one more slide to recreation. Even if it's outside of that, all college and universities are looking opportunities to provide well-being for students, right? So you're going to find a bunch of fitness classes. You're going to find outdoor adventure classes, hiking, kayaking, skiing, and then this can be geographically dependent. At Bryant, you're going to be able to go up with the ski club to Vermont or New Hampshire, but you're not probably going to find a scuba opportunity at Bryant's campus, right? So sometimes geographical location is an important part of your college search and figuring out what type of opportunities are offered at those campuses. As you look at different college and universities, evaluating their athletic facilities can be an important part of what's offered to you as a student on campus. So you're going to see recreation centers at all college and university campuses. Certainly, even things like dietitians, nutritionists, opportunities within the health services to support physical health, mental well-being, physical well-being for students on campus. And then you might even find other groups on campus that are organized different athletic or sport interests. And you can flip one more slide. And the last thing I wanted to add there is universities. It's also part of our strategic initiatives, right? If you look at club sports, intramural sports, recreation opportunities, it does a variety of things. We talk about affinity groups. If we can provide a student an opportunity to be involved in club rugby, and that's kind of their group, and they have a social network, and that helps them with their transition to a U.S. environment. It helps them do better in the classroom. It helps them have people that they can rely on. That's good for our community building on campus. Club sports recreations are also used as enrollment tools, right? We're trying to provide the best student experience, and if we can provide those things for students, they're probably going to be more likely to enroll in our institutions. And you'll see students that are engaged not only in athletics, but a variety of different community opportunities that we have on campus often result in better experiences on our campus, higher GPAs, and then meaning that they're going to stay there for 4 years and graduate from our institution. Those are all important factors that we look at, and providing these opportunities and making sure that these students have outlets is also a part of the strategic goals of institutions. So, things like skateboarding and esports and pickleball are relatively newer opportunities. So athletic departments or recreation departments on campus are going to always be aware of new and emerging sports and how they can provide these opportunities based on the interests of the students. And if we can be aware of the or ahead of the curve on that, it's going to provide a better student experience. And then I would also tell you, like, most colleges and universities are going to provide an opportunity if you want to start a club or if you have a sport you're interested in, that you can go through student government, you can put a proposal together, you can ask for a staff advisor, and you can actually petition to become an official, club sport or recreation opportunity that is offered on campus. There's usually a semester period, and then after that, if you can get the necessary student involvement that club sports need, then oftentimes there'll be funding to continue that club sport going forward. So universities want that from students, because it's the more opportunities we can provide for students, the better experiences that they're going to have. So know that those are options as well. I hope that was a pretty good overview of athletics at all different levels at U.S. institutions. But I will stop talking now, and I'll turn it over to Himani so she can give her perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. That was an amazing overview of varsity athletics and what lies beyond as well on campus. I just want to say a huge thanks, because I know that you've also stepped in last minute to cover a topic that was not originally assigned to you. So really appreciate you stepping in. And I just want to say to all attendees, Andrew has worked with Education USA quite often and is a real veteran of this topic. So we're really grateful that we could have him speak with us today and share from his experience and insights and knowledge to educate us on this topic as well. And moving on now to the last section, we're going to now have Q&A with Himani Moore. And Himani the term I've used is student athlete and coaching alumna, because she's been a student athlete and has coached as well. And I'm just going to do a little bit more of a introduction to Himani, so you can get a sense of the range of experience that I'll be interviewing her about. Himani Moore was an All India Tennis Association ranked player. She was number 2 in tennis juniors from 2012 to 2015. And she played in the India team from 2012 to 2015. She was one of 4 chosen for the Asia team for the Europe Tour in 2012 and 2013. And she was also later ranked 12 in women's singles and 7 in women's doubles. She studied at Miranda House at the University of Delhi and then completed her bachelor's degree at Southeastern Louisiana University in 2018, where she also played NCAA Division I tennis. She then completed her MBA at Franklin Pierce University, where she was still playing with the NCAA. She has played international tennis federation matches as an athlete from India. She completed her MS in sports management from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 2025. She also has US coaching experience. Himani was assistant coach with a very successful tennis team at Amherst College. And now, with her husband Neeraj Chopra, she has founded a sports management company called Bell Sports, managing and representing athletes, and also works with the Neeraj Chopra Foundation. Welcome, Himani, and thank you so much for being with us today and sharing from your experiences.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you, Andrew. You did it so well, and you explained the coaching side of sports very well. And yes, I am ready to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to ask you about questions about different aspects of your life as a student athlete, and also you can share from your experience as a coach. But going back to your experience as a student athlete, Could you describe life as a student athlete in terms of balancing sports and academics? Because both can be quite demanding, especially since you were playing competitively. So, what did schedule look like? How much did you travel? How did you generally balance sports and athletics in terms of time, in terms of mental and physical health? Could you maybe share a bit about these three different points?
Definitely, definitely. So I'll start with my schedule. And as a student athlete, my schedule was very structured. Definitely, it was structured, and but it also taught me how to be very productive and intentional with my time. So my days were typically, it was starting very early, sometimes around 5 a.m. And we started with our physical training or gym sessions. And from 8 a.m., I had to go for my lectures and my academic commitments during the day. In the afternoons, I would have team practices or individual practice if I have individual session with my coach, and then dedicated my evenings to studying and completing my assignments, because that was very important for me when I was the student athlete there. During the season, weekends were mainly focused on competitions because they usually keep matches on the weekend so that we don't miss classes. So the overall routine kept me very disciplined, and it also helped me build a very strong work ethic. Next is the travel part. So the travel was a very exciting part of my experience in the US. And most of our competitions were scheduled over the weekends, as I told, because it helped to actually minimize missing classes. And this made it very easier to stay on track academically while still competing at a very high level, because I competed at division 1 and division 2, so the competition was very high. And traveling also gave me very valuable exposure. It allowed me to experience different environments and helped me bond with my teammates. It was very good experience because we usually traveled very early or maybe Friday night, and then we came back Sunday evening to the campus. So the whole weekend we spent in hotel and we were playing matches. So it was a great time with the teammates for bonding and also playing matches. And third one is the balance. It was the balance part is it was actually the very difficult part, because when you also want an A in the class, it becomes more difficult. And yeah, it required me to be very organized and proactive because I could not wait for the last moment and do things. And I learned how to manage my time effectively by planning ahead and making most of the gaps in my schedule. Mentally, it was very tough, and it taught me how to stay focused and handle pressure in a positive way, as because I was constantly working towards goals in both areas. I was also trying to win matches over the weekend and playing, and also trying to get an A in my classes. So yes, it was a lot of pressure, but it was a positive pressure. Physically, I became more aware of the importance of recovery, rest, and proper nutrition, because finding that recovery part during a very busy schedule was very challenging. So overall, the experience helped me develop a strong sense of balance and self discipline. So the balancing part really taught me a lot in my professional career, even today. And the next is the life skills part. So, through this journey, I gained a wide range of valuable life skills. Time management and discipline became part of my daily routine. And teamwork and communication were strengthened through working closely with others, because we were always, yes, we were playing individually on the court, but we were always playing with the team. And US tennis is one experience where you are playing an individual sport like tennis, but you are a part of team, because you play six singles and three doubles, and you only win if all of your teammate wins. Like you have to get 4 points out of seven. So it is a team sport, but also you are playing an individual at the same time. So I really learned, I developed a lot of leadership skills also, because I was captain of my team in the final years, and also developed a strong sense of accountability. Most importantly, I built resilience and adaptability, because I had to learn how to stay very positive, adjust to challenges, and keep improving day by day in the class and also on the tennis court. So these are the skills that go far beyond sports, and they apply to all areas of life. And I'm still using them in my current, what I'm doing right now in the company that we just launched in January. And I feel that part of student athlete life is really helping me today.
That's wonderful.
Did I cover everything, or do I
Yes,
still have?
I know. I think that's great. There's one last question that I wanted to ask you. Based on your journey and what you have seen amongst others, so both your own journey or journey of, the journeys of fellow athletes, what professional opportunities did you feel like the student athlete journey opened up for you if one decides not to turn pro? Because I imagine there would be those who don't decide to turn pro. I think for you it was for reasons of an injury, but it could be
Yes.
different reasons for different people. If an athlete decides not to turn pro, then how can this student athlete journey benefit one professionally, and what, and you can of course share your experiences of your own journey as well.
Yes, so I'll also give my example. I wanted to go pro, but because of injury, I could not, and I have to switch. And I focused on my studies a lot, but still, I knew, and I continued playing the sport until 2022. And then finally, when I finished my NCAA eligibility, I stopped playing tennis. But until then, I was playing tennis and doing my studies. But to your question, this experience opens up many opportunities beyond playing professionally, because it prepares you for careers in areas such as sports management is one thing. Then you can go in coaching, marketing, and I feel that you gain a lot of skills that you can transfer to corporate environments because of the strong work ethic and transferable skills that you develop throughout your journey and your experience. So for me, I transitioned to sports management, and it was very natural because I loved sport and always have that side, athlete side of things. And I always wanted to go into sports. For me, it has allowed me to stay connected to the sporting space while contributing in a more strategic and professional capacity right now. I have been able to take what I learned as an athlete and apply it to managing and supporting others within the sport right now. Because in sports management agency and the foundation, that's what we are doing right now. It's been a very rewarding journey because it helped me a lot, as I mentioned, to transfer those skills from being a student athlete, because you become mature at a very early age. I was 18 when I went there, and I had to manage my whole day. And you have to also manage your finances, you have to pay your rent. So it teaches you a lot of things. And yeah, it shows that there are many meaningful pathways beyond being on the field, because right now I am not on the field, not playing since 2022. I have not been on the competitive side of tennis, but now we are doing a business and sports side, and all those skills really helped me get where I am right now. So overall, I would say being a student athlete, it was very challenging but incredibly rewarding experience. It not only shaped me academically and athletically, but also helped me grow as an individual and prepared me for life beyond sport.
Thank you, Humani. That was really helpful to hear and really encouraging to hear. How the experience gave you so much more than just the experience itself. There was so much more that it offered in terms of your professional journey and life itself. We have just been joined by Alejandro Andres, our first speaker who was unable to join us earlier. I'm just going to make him co-host, and Hello, Alejandro. I think you should be able to unmute yourself. Um,
Mute. Hi, how are you? Sorry I'm late.
That's all right. We've actually just drawn this this presentation to an end. In terms of the presentation section, we had Andrew Kupek. Andrew, I don't know if you want to turn on your camera, who is the Director of International Missions at Bryant University. Um, speak, kind of cover your section. But I just wonder whether you might still be able to give us a few, maybe in about 5 to 7 minutes, if you can, 5 to 10 minutes. Give us the highlights. So we've covered an overview of the NCAA, NEI, style varsity athletics, uh, club sports and mural sports and so on. And Himani has shared a bit about her personal journey being a student athlete and what that experience opened up for her professionally after she decided not to turn pro. I wonder whether there are any highlights in the next 5 to 10 minutes that you would want to cover in terms of, say, your experiences with student athletes, what really made um, for student athletes to stand out in terms of um, balancing sports and academics, um, where they've gone since then in terms of the professional journey, what you feel makes a good student athlete, maybe a few highlights. Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot, and this is a bit different from what we'd already discussed.
No, absolutely.
Go for it, yeah.
I mean, I can tell you from both ends. I was a student athlete myself in the early 90s, and I started coaching NCAA Division II sports in maybe 2015. And now being here at Hampshire, Franklin Pierce for 5 years. And I think it's a great model. I wish more places had a model like this. For young athletes, if you almost don't become a pro, your career almost ends, and it goes so much effort into them to get to a certain level. So I think it's a great system that you can study and continue to compete and enrich both, your education as a professional and also your whatever your sport is, continue to become better and grow as an adult, as a young person. And then, sometimes that becomes your career, like in my place. But I just love the model. I think it's a very interesting model. The US, of course, has so many colleges, and the NCAA does such a good job keeping it competitive at every different NCAA or NAIA association. And to me, it was great. And I can also only maybe give ideas for tennis. Tennis is such an international sport that most of the tennis team has, I would say 90% of their players are international. So that is also great for other cultures to mix in together as a team and learn from other cultures. It's great to see when Himani was on our team, someone from India mixing up with someone from Spain or Bolivia or France, different nationalities, and all becoming friends and a team and competing. So I couldn't recommend it more. I think it's a very, very good system.
Can I ask you what, from your experience as a coach, do the majority of student athletes go on to turn pro, or what other careers how do they transition into professional life in other ways? What have you seen? How has that experience, given them a platform in their professional journeys?
Well, it depends on the sport because there's so many sports, but I think the percentage is probably pretty low of how many actually become professional athletes. But the possibilities there, obviously, it's got to be smaller that they go from high school to professional athletes. But it really depends on the sport. I think in the US, American football, definitely basketball, maybe baseball are some of their biggest sports, and even ice hockey. Definitely, the drafting goes depending on how well they did on their college teams, and they go directly. It's rare that some of the athletes go, directly to those sports. As far as tennis goes, it's also fairly big. Um, Usually, the NCAA winner, the best player, gets an automatic bid to the U.S. Open, so they're already mixing into the professional sports right away. They get a chance to play in one of the biggest tournaments every year. So, but Division 2 sports maybe not as much.
Mhm.
And it also depends on the sports. The sports like maybe lacrosse or field hockey that they don't have professional, associations and things like that. But I think it's also most people will make it to professional sports, but I think it still helps you to growth
Yeah.
personally,
Mhm.
and as you get an education and now you have a better idea, you start working, you still make lifelong friends. So I wouldn't see it as just, oh, if you're gonna make it to a professional, I think it's just teaches you so much about the sport, and as you grow,
Yeah.
I bet most of the academies that people run and they start their own academies, whether it's football or swimming or tennis, they probably play on college, and so.
Yeah, and that's exactly the case I'm trying to make is that one should play sports in your university, even if you don't go pro, that it opens up a world of opportunity
Mhm.
and a world of skills that can give you a
Mhm.
platform for life and professional journeys, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew, were you going to add something?
I just wanted to add a perspective,
Yeah.
and to Coach's point, it depends on sport and it depends on what division level you're playing at. But if you took all of the Division 1, 2, and 3 athletes in the U.S., less than 2% of them are going on to professional sports. But I worked for when I graduated from college. I worked for a company. It was called Cintas Corporation. They employ about 50,000 people in the U.S. And I had to go through hiring training, and I talked to hiring managers at the company, and they would talk specifically about targeting student athletes because it fit like their corporate culture. And what student athletes told them is they can already manage their time, they can deal with adversity, they know how to be part of a team, they know how to communicate with other people because they've had to do that throughout their entire sports careers. So you can even find from an employability standpoint, student athletes bring a pretty now other students can display that, but student athletes have that kind of built into their resume as they're applying to different industries.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew. And that ties in so well with what Coach Alejandro was saying, as well as what Himani was saying in terms of the skills she learned managing her academics and her sports and her time and focus and all of that. Alejandro, one last question for you before I open it up for Q&A from the audience. What do you think makes what are the skills, the soft skills, the attitudes that make for a strong student athlete who can be motivated about sports, balance their academics alongside? Of course, Imani shared her experience as an athlete, but from you as a coach, and with a long-standing experience in the field, what um, what is your perspective?
Excuse me, can you repeat the second part? I heard the first part about strong student athletes.
What soft skills, what attitudes, what characteristics make for a strong student athlete who can be motivated and achieve in their sport, but also in their academics?
Okay. Well, most of the students already come very motivated. As you do the recruiting process, they definitely give you a good idea of who they are personally, give you a story, a little bit of their histories playing tennis, and also they are required to have certain level of grades. They have to maintain a certain level of grades, and it's kind of interesting. Most of the students, half of them, are very leaning into their education. Maybe the other half are still more into their athletics. But I will say what makes a good one is that probably that has a good mix of both. And definitely most of the students, at least in tennis, to become at a high enough level to play in college, they're very disciplined. They have to take a lot of lessons, a lot of competition, a lot of traveling. Also very hard to get good grades when you're traveling that much and training that much. So for them to already have good grades, it's already a good sign. And so I think it's about a half and half. They do have to have fairly good education levels, but what I found that was most of the students that I've recruited and dealt with, they they're very disciplined on both. Even though the ones that are really love the sport more than the education, maybe they're kind of late getting their studies in, but they always figure a way, ask for help, and work really hard to get their grades. And so that's kind of what you look for. There are cases that student athletes don't get enough good grades and they get kicked out of the institution or they get second chances. At least in my tennis teams, that hasn't really happened, but it definitely happens in other sports. Because we the coaches hang out together and talk about a lot of the stuff, and they do have some issues with some players being eligible because of their studies. But yeah, you need a good mix, but it's interesting. Some of the students are using their athletic ability to get an education, and they're focused on their futures as professionals in a different field, and some are still have that competitive edge and wanting to become as best as they can in their sport. And then you as they be some of them I had for 4 years, you see how their growth, a little bit of both. And with internships in the summer, they start working, they start getting a feel of the real world. It's a As a coach, is a very fulfilling that you have with your students, because you see them from very young adults and you see them mature into like real adults and then getting married and having families. It's kind of really nice to have that relationship with them. And as a coach, it's kind of interesting. You're not just guiding them through their athletics. Sometimes you also help them going through personal things or questions about life, and they also ask you a lot about your personal life and how do you deal with things like this. So it's not just athletics. As a coach, it's a lot more. It goes beyond that, and it's kind of to see them, in the case of Himani, also seeing her grow and getting married, and it's wonderful. It really is.
Thank you, Coach Alejandro. It's pretty lovely to have you join us, and I'm glad you could make it, even though it was just towards the end, but I'm glad we got a chance to hear your perspectives and your insights. I'm going to, if it's all right, we'll run just maybe 3 or 4 minutes